When I read the gospel for today, I even made a comment before, this is a tough gospel to speak about because this is one of the most popular gospel readings that are used at funeral services. And I said, we're here to celebrate life. We're here to rejoice in the life. But in actuality, this gospel is very important to us because it exemplifies what we're here for tonight. We're here to stop the death that takes place because of those who try to play God. As we contemplate life, there's controversy in science, or so they say, as to when life begins. But any scientist would admit, and I am a scientist, before I was a priest, I was in science. We know when life begins. Life begins at the moment of that spark. And what spark am I talking about? At conception, there's an occurrence that takes place which is called particular or particle radiation. When life begins, when the ovum is made alive, there's this radiant light that shines in a test tube. And if you go to a fertility doctor and a nurse, when they look at that, when they do that in vitro fertilization, they actually look under a microscope for that burst of light. And at that point, they know that's a viable pregnancy. Interesting enough, that's the same light from that particle or particular radiation that took place when Jesus was raised from the dead. That radiation, that light that shone forth when life was restored, scarred that cloth, that shroud. Nothing else could have done that except for that particular radiation, and it cannot reoccur. There's no way any human being can reproduce that event through particle radiation. As many times as scientists have tried to do that, in nuclear physicists, they cannot reproduce that moment, that spark of life. And that's what we're here for tonight. We're here to remind everybody in the world that life begins at conception. I listened to the psalm and I listened to the antiphon that says, "You are my beloved Son, in whom I am pleased. This day I have begotten you," which we hear in John's Gospel also. It's a reminder to us that every time life is formed, I can just in my mind imagine God saying at that moment of conception, "You are my beloved son or daughter. This day I have begotten you." And society has so ardently tried hard to take control of that life and become God itself. There's a famous writer, I don't remember who his name was. He said, but once we begin to try to be God ourselves, we create an emptiness, a void that we can never fill because we do not have the capacity or the ability to fill the emptiness that is God himself. As we gather tonight for celebration, as we gather as a community who celebrates life, may we make that extra effort to proclaim the truth of life, to proclaim to all the world that every life is precious. Even the gospel, I say, he says, "I go and prepare a place for you, so that where I am, you also may be." A promise, I think, that is inherited to all those innocent lives that were lost because of the tragic scientific events called abortion or as they say today, women's health. It's horrible what our politicians and what our leaders are doing in regards to saying when life begins. We don't have to get into the gory details of it, but you know what legislations have been passed and what those legislations do right up into the moment of birth as the child is coming forth from our birth canal. How horrible as a society, how low have we stooped to not cherish that life, to say I can put it to the side and allow the mother to decide what's going to happen with that baby. My friends, my brothers and sisters in Christ, from the beginning of time, God has told us how precious life is and how we are called to defend life in all its stages. See, life issues are not just about birth. Life issues are about life, from the beginning to the end, to natural death. And we have to be ardent defenders of that life, no matter where we are, no matter what situation. I can tell you a story in which I remember, and sometimes it gets emotional. I don't know if you ever saw that display, The Human Body. It travels out throughout the United States. I happened to go to it when I was in Florida, and it's a horrible thing to go to, because the Chinese have sold the bodies of individuals to produce this, and it shows creation of life from the minute of conception throughout the whole body, and it shows the human anatomy and everything. Scientifically, it's a wonderful place and thing to see if you're able to study that stuff. But when I was going through that, I walked through the whole thing until we got to the point of where we entered into the room of reproduction. And it showed the stages of life from every moment, from the moment of conception. And if you look at it, even shows at that moment of conception a sort of burst of light that takes place at conception. And there was a woman off to the side in that place, and I was not dressed as a priest because I was on vacation, and she was in tears. She was bawling. And I went over to her and asked her, is she okay? Because I thought maybe something happened. And she says, no, I'm fine. And she says, I didn't know. I didn't know. And I said, you didn't know what? And she said, I didn't know I had that life in me when I had the abortion. She saw the stages of life. And at the point where she had her abortion, she saw the formation of that child. And it wasn't just a cell. It was a child. And it brought her to tears to know that she was a mother. And I told her at that point that you're still a mother, that child is still yours. And I would name it, and I would pray, and ask for that child to pray for you. Because the grace that you will receive from that is far beyond anything that this world can offer. So we celebrate life tonight. We celebrate as a community to remind ourselves that every life is cherished. Every life is precious. Even the Mass we offer tonight is in giving thanksgiving to God for life. And we must be ardent in our duty and courageous in our words and actions to proclaim what you do each and every day and what you support as you come here tonight. To remind people that there are options, that there are things available to them so that they can bring life and cherish that life and raise that life into very fruitful creations of God, beautiful sons and daughters of their Creator, who from the moment of creation knew each and every one of us by name and calls us into that glorious kingdom. The gospel reminds us that He prepares a way for each and every one of us, that there is a place in eternity waiting for us to be with our glorious God. I know I don't want to be the one standing before our God, answering for why I did not defend that precious life in the womb, or that precious child who was in need of help and had no place to lay their head, or a mother who struggled to feed her children and to support her children. It's going to be a tough day for those individuals to stand before God, because the gospel says, when I was hungry, you fed me. When I was naked, you clothed me. When I was alone, you visited me. My brothers and sisters, we have a command by God from the moment of our baptism to proclaim first and foremost that Jesus Christ is Lord, but also to cherish each and every one of God's creations, to make sure equity is given to each life, and to provide in whatever way we can the support that is necessary so that life may flourish. As the gospel in Jesus says, I come that you might have life and have that life to the fullest, that your life may be abundant. Let us continue to reach out against those who would deny that life, who would relegate life to a cell. Our life as Christians are clear. The gospel is clear. He is the way, the truth, and the life. And if we profess our faith in Him, we must be life and proclaim it everywhere.